And we will start. So I will hand over to our amazing presenter, Judith Marychurch. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here this evening. So my role is the Assistant Dean Teaching and Learning at Melbourne Law School, which basically means I work a lot with students. So there will be aspects of today's presentation that I know very, very well, such as course planning. Do feel free to ask questions when we get to that point in the proceedings. And also I will hang around a little bit after the presentation if you have any particular questions that you would like to ask. I'd also like to thank in advance our lovely student panel members who have given us their time this evening to speak to us a little bit later. For now, you have me. All right. I would like to start this presentation by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations and pay my respects to elders past and present and to any Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Particularly as a law school, it's really important that we start off events like this with an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging the role that our Indigenous people have played in this land, and acknowledging too the important role that they have to play in law in Australia. And that's something that we're really trying hard to grapple with, and it's something that is very important to MLS. All right, so without further ado, all right, so let's have a look at, and this was working before and now it's not. Try again. No, if we could, maybe if you pass the keyboard over to me. It's a brand new one, batteries and everything going, and it was working before. Try now. Got it. Okay, fingers crossed it will work. Otherwise, I'll reach for the keyboard. Okay, all right. So, look, I understand most of you have already applied for the JD at Melbourne. Would that be pretty right? Okay, excellent. All right. If you haven't, that's fine. We've got some details up that we'll give you the information on, so that's no problem at all. You've probably already looked at rankings. If you want to have a look at them, these are our rankings here. So, #1 law school in Australia, both on the Times Higher Education world rankings by both the subject area and then generally, and either number 10 or number 14 in the world. Okay, so bit of an overview. All right, so the JD is a program, it's a law degree that leads to admission to practice. So that's the first key thing to remember. It is a little bit different to an LLB. It is taught at a master's level. Okay, so it's a higher level qualification. That means then that we have different expectations in terms of the sorts of things and the depth at which you're going to be looking at when you come into your classes. Okay, so to give you a bit of an idea about what the course structure is, it's this. Okay, so if you're not familiar with how law degrees in Australia are set up, you will find that by and large, approximately 2/3 of any law curriculum in Australia is comprised of compulsory subjects. The reason for that is that law degrees need to be accredited by admitting authorities so that graduates of those programs can ultimately seek to be admitted to practice in the jurisdiction of their choice. Okay, so that's basically why you'll find anywhere about 2/3 of the subjects, and in our case, it's exactly 2/3, 16 subjects are compulsory. Then you have a suite of elective subjects, and I'll get to some of the options that you have in terms of your electives. Sometimes I get questions about whether you specialise in a law degree. You don't really, because of the number of compulsory subjects that you have. You can choose electives in particular areas if you want to, but I also like to encourage students to think about whatever actually interests them. If there's something that really piques your interest, even if you think, I don't really think I'd like to practice in that area, or I'd like to follow up with it in the future, sometimes you go into a class like that and you come out of it going, you know what, I've got new ideas here, and I think there's actually something I might want to do in here in that particular area. That's a fairly common experience. So I'd encourage you to keep your options open there. Don't get yourself set just, I'm only going commercial or corporate, I'm only going criminal. Keep your options open with elective subjects. Okay, now in terms of how it's structured, and this is one of the things that I do with students all the time, you can do your JD part-time or full-time. okay? And you can move between part-time and full-time while you're here. It's not unusual for students to do that. Sometimes students start off part-time and they think, actually, things have changed a bit for me. I realised I can drop down a day or two of work. I'm going to be able to finish the degree a bit more quickly, and they speed up. Other times, students will start out full-time. They go, actually, there are other things going on in my life, maybe a work opportunity comes up or something like that, and they change, okay? That is okay, all right? We can do that. It's really important until you've done most of your first year subjects that if you're thinking about pulling out of something or whatever it might be, that you do get some advice, just because there are prerequisites for some subjects that we are fairly strict with. We've got more flexibility than what we used to have, which is a good thing, I think, but there are still some restrictions. So I always encourage students to seek advice, particularly if you're fairly early in your studies yet, okay? But there is flexibility there, okay? Life happens sometimes and it might be necessary to reduce load, or you might find, yes, I can speed it up, which is great, okay? So you've got flexibility there. Commencement is only beginning of the year, so you start in February, and I'll get to the subject that we begin with, which is basically a 2-week intensive marked on essentially a pass resubmit basis, which is really a foundational subject. It's one where you get to meet a lot of your peers. You're going to be in a small group learning with them for the 2 weeks. You're doing your assessments at the end of each week and handing them in, getting quick feedback. Okay, and then you move after a week free of classes straight into your semester 1. One of the good things is it means that during semester 1, if you are studying full time, you've already completed one of your 4 subjects. You've only got 3 to enrol in. Okay, and if you're doing it part time, you might just do 1 or 2 in that first semester. Okay, so it gives you some flexibility. All right. Okay, some of the benefits of the Melbourne JD. As I said earlier, it is a high-level qualification. It's a master's level law degree. What we find is that our graduate students, because they've already done 3 years of tertiary study, they bring a range of perspectives into the classroom and a degree of maturity in terms of their learning and understanding their own learning and how to learn at university. And that means that they bring additional skills and knowledge into the classroom that provides for a rich and diverse learning cohort within the classroom and helps provide the foundation for you to really get into the discussion-based learning that is the predominant feature of the degree at MLS. So most of our classes are structured so that after LMR, where the classes are often a bit smaller, after that, for the main part, you're going to be in classes that have maybe around 60 students, okay, which opens up opportunity for you to actually have some discussion. So I teach an intensive in the middle of the year. I'll have 60 students in my classroom and we'll work through content. We'll discuss things as we go. We might work through a few examples. It's a very practical subject, mine, and we work through an actual case from beginning to end, and we unpack all the questions around how you prove a case in court, how you assess admissibility of evidence, and we look at that particular case as it unfolds class by class. So it's quite a fun way to learn that way. It also provides opportunity for really rich discussions in the classroom, which can be held, I find, both as a large group, where so long as we're respectful of one another, we can hear a range of views, but we'll also break out into smaller groups sometimes, maybe work on an activity and come back. So that's the sort of learning environment that will predominantly be the sort of classroom experience that you're having. That learning environment, we find, lets the teacher get to know you. That's really important in LMR. You'll often find that your LMR teacher is, and that's legal method and reasoning. That's our February subject that you do over that 2-week period. We often find that that's a relationship that you'll build up with an academic at MLS that enables you then to sort of feel like you've got someone you can go and ask a question of or talk to or something like that. So, and they are also good people to refer you to other people if you might need particular help or support in a particular area. So it's actually good for teachers to be able to get to know students. I certainly value that and appreciate being able to do that when I'm in the classroom. You will also find that you have expert teachers who are abreast of current events, and they're often top experts in their field. You will have professors who are teaching in that very first foundational subject. There will be other teachers, yes, you'll have teachers maybe who are working at the bar, and so they're doing court work, they're barristers, and they teach for us as well. So you'll actually get a range of people that you'll have in your classrooms. Some teachers' teaching styles are going to suit your learning style better than others. But as you've probably learned at university, you need to be able to adapt to that sort of thing, and you'll find some things will resonate more with you than others. Most of our teachers are pretty open, and they'll invite you to ask questions. And if you've got a comment, or you might want to suggest, I'm really struggling with this, can you try explaining an example in this way? It might help me get it. They're normally pretty open to that sort of thing. I certainly like to hear that feedback from my students so that I can work that in as we progress, particularly in semester length subjects. You've got time to actually do that and as things unfold week by week. So legal method and reasoning, I'm sure that'll probably come up with our student panel, but it's actually a really good way to get to know your peers as well as your teacher. We've been doing it that way for a long time. We find it really gives you just a group of people. You'll often find people that you'll do other subjects with moving through your degree, and hopefully some lasting friendships. Okay, so, all right, we've lost that again. Now it's going, I think. Did that go to the next one? Yes. Okay. All right. So clinical legal education. All right. One of the things that we do at MLS is clinical legal education in a couple of different ways. You'll see on the slide there that there are a series of clinic-based subjects. These have developed and grown over time through our director of the clinical legal education program here at Melbourne. She is now an award-winning teacher nationally this year, recognising her work as a director of our clinics. So we've got the Disability Human Rights Clinic as an example. Legal internship is a subject where you can actually go and experience working in a workplace. There's another slide on that in a moment. And you'll find that then there's a range of specialist subjects that also involve clinics. These subjects are subjects that count as electives. So they're one of the 8 electives that you can do as part of the JD. So there's a range of them. There is now a family law clinic as well, which has been newly launched just probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago, I think. All right, so internships, the legal internship subject that I mentioned a moment ago. This is a subject that you can do as one of your electives in the JD. You can do an independent one if it meets the criterion to be approved by the director of our clinical legal education program. But there's also a range of established internship providers that we have with strong relationships with over time with MLS, and they will take on our students on a regular basis. So examples of those are the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, Fitzroy Legal Service, JobWatch, Refugee Legal, Treaty Advancement Commission, Victorian Legal Aid, Women's Legal Service of Victoria. So there's a range of those that are available to you. Now that is an application-based program, but we do find that if you do want to do an experiential learning subject like one of our clinics or legal internships, you will normally be able to do one of them. So you do have to go through the application process, but the idea is that we're going to make that as available to students as possible. And sometimes students will do more than one of them. Okay. Now, apart from those experiential learning subjects, there's also a large range of electives that are on offer. So there are examples up on the screen here. You'll see that they range through a variety of areas of law. Okay, and once you've done several of your first year subjects, you're going to be able to do most of these. Okay, so you'll see there are things like intellectual property law. There's also international law, criminal law, startup law, negotiation, mediation and advocacy. So some of the more practice-oriented subjects, things like media law or insolvency law. There's a range of things that you can do. Okay, so these ones are subjects that will be predominantly, again, taught in classes of around 60. Some of them, like for instance, mediation and advocacy, may run with smaller numbers because of the nature of the sorts of things and exercises that you're doing in the classroom, which means that a smaller number is a much better learning experience for everybody. So there will be a few that will be a bit smaller. Okay. Our Legal Academic Skills Centre. I often work with the leader of this program. It is called the Ian Malcolm Centre for Legal Academic Skills. Ian Malcolm was one of my first year teachers when I started at Melbourne Law School a long time ago. And he's an amazing teacher, very deserving of having the centre named after him. My colleague, Chantel Morton, is the director of the Legal Academic Skills Centre, and she is amazing. She basically hand selects and works with later year students after they've sort of had a bit of time at law school, and she trains them to become what we call EAGLE facilitators, which is the early academic guidance for legal education. And so she runs that program, specially designed to assist our law students, particularly in their early years and through the core subjects, to really get that strong foundation that they need to be able to succeed in a law degree. So they offer a range of things. There's a series of workshops. There are individual consultations that you can book. In some cases, depends on the assessment task, and there's guidance provided on when they can and can't do certain things. You might, in fact, be able to get someone to actually read a draft and to give you some feedback. Okay, so it does depend on the task, but there is that sort of service. They provide a writing centre, and then they've got a series of publications that are on our learning management system. So you're probably familiar with learning management systems. Just like you've got a subject site, our Legal Academic Skills Centre has a site, and it's got a host of resources on there. So there'll be videos, there are written resources, there's the guide to academic success, and there's the Success at MLS blog that you can access as well. So there's a range of resources that are really there designed to help you to achieve and to do your very best in the degree. Okay, so international opportunities. There's a huge range of international opportunities you can take advantage of while you're here at MLS. They range from things that are, I thought there was a dot point on there, but there's not. Okay, so you can do subjects that are, say, only 2 weeks long, and it might actually go up to, in the case of these degree partnerships, a year-long experience. So it depends exactly what it is that you want to do. So you might, for instance, want to do a subject, and I'm just going to try clicking, here we go. So there's a couple of examples of subjects here. So there's an Indigenous law subject, Law and Legal Practice in Asia, Centre for Transnational Legal Studies, and New Technology Law. Now, the Centre for Transnational Legal Studies program, that is a semester length program where you go to London and you study at CTLS. The other subjects, the first two and the last one, New Technology Law, they are single subjects. So they basically would count as an elective, and you go overseas with a teacher and a group of your peers, again, who have applied to do that particular subject. And you basically will do learning while you're away, and you will come back and do assessments. Okay, you may do some assessments while you're there as well, depending on the particular subject. But that's a really good opportunity to see if you want to just have a small experience in a fairly safe environment with people that you'll get to know fairly well during that period. They're good ones to do. There are other travelling subjects that are just in Australia as well, so a couple of small ones of that nature if you're interested in that. The other option is to do a semester length exchange. So you can do up to 4 of your subjects from your elective program on exchange. So if you want to just do a couple of months overseas, maybe up to 6 months if you're going to do a bit of travel, etc., as long as you're sort of back for the next semester, you're fine. You can do that. That's no problem at all. Now I'm just going to go back to that previous slide. So this one is the year-long option. Okay, now this one I need to add. With our degree partnership programs, you have to apply to and be accepted by our partner institution. Okay, now they will have mark requirements, weighted average marks often that you've got to meet, as well as other entry requirements to apply to that institution. But if you apply and are accepted, then upon completion of the degree there, and it would be a master's degree you would do with one of those institutions, then when you come back, okay, you present your transcript from that institution, we will give you credit for most of the programs. It's for 3 electives. So what you do is you do all your compulsory subjects plus 5 electives before you go. And then you go and you do 12 months. Most of the time it's sort of roughly mid-year to the following mid-year. So there might be a little bit of course planning. You need to work around to make sure it's all going to make everything line up for you. But if you do that, once you come back, you get credit for those 3 subjects that you've earned credit for from doing the masters at the other institution, and you complete your JD, but you also have a master's degree from the other institution. So that's another popular option. Okay. All right, our careers service. All right, our careers team are really great. Okay, they've been here for a long time now. I've worked with the head of that team for quite a while now, and one of the things that they do is they've done a lot of research and work into where our students are going. So you'll find that they're going into a range of things. It's not just the big corporate law firms. Okay, there's a lot of other areas where people go. You will probably see if you come to MLS that there's often talks being given by judges, for instance, and we've got people who are going and working and clerking for our judges who are basically tops in their field at the moment. They will be lawyers in law firms. We've got people who are judges. They're going to be barristers, public prosecutors. There's a range of career options that you've got. People will work in government. They'll also work in the private sector, and they might be using maybe some of the previous study that they've done before coming to MLS, have a range of things that they're doing. So our dedicated careers team here at MLS provide a range of services which are all designed to help you to get into the sorts of things that you want to do. They are very successful with what they do. I often encourage students, particularly if they're not sure quite where they want to go, because of the time that they've been working in this field, they actually know where a lot of students are and they have ideas and they'll know about things, just sort of the knowledge that you get from doing something like that for a while. And it's actually really helpful. I will also give a plug to the MULSS because they offer a great career service as well. And no doubt our student panel can speak to that. Okay, student groups and societies. That was a nice little segue, wasn't it? Okay, so our main one is the Melbourne University Law Student Society. Okay, and we have Augustine from the MULSS today. Now, are you from MULSS as well? No, other, okay, all good. That's no problem. Okay, the LSS run a range of things. Okay, so you'll see some examples of competitions there. Witness examination, I've often judged that one. That's really fun. Okay, negotiation, client interviewing, mooting. Okay, careers, as I said. They also run the Stepping Stones program and the Pathfinder program. And then there is a range of other student groups as well. Okay, so I work a lot with the student groups too. Some of them are specialist law area ones, so they've got particular interest areas, and they might be working closely with an academic who is also a specialist in one of those fields. Often that academic might be able to help suggest speakers. They might actually know people themselves who might be good for them to get out as speakers. So there's a variety of events that they will run throughout the year. Okay, entry requirements. Applicants have to hold a degree, an undergraduate degree. It doesn't matter where it's from. Okay, yes, we do have many Melbourne University graduates coming to do the JD here, but that is not a requirement. It can be from any institution. Selection is based on academic performance in all your previous tertiary studies. So it doesn't matter where that study is for, what level it is. We would have people who have a PhD, for instance, applying to do the JD because they want to learn. That's not an unusual thing. They just want to come back and might have a PhD in an area, but they want to study law. Great. Okay, so all previous tertiary education is relevant in terms of your entry requirements. But most of our students will be coming basically straight from having done a 3-year undergraduate degree. Okay, all right. So if you are applying through our general entry requirements, what we're going to look at, the selection committee will be looking at, will be your weighted average mark in all that previous tertiary study. So to give you a bit of guidance, 80% or equivalent or above, you will be competitive for entry into the JD. At least 70% you will be considered for entry. If you're below 70% in your weighted average mark and you have an eligible graduate access Melbourne application, you will be considered for entry. Now, if you meet these, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get an offer, but this gives you some good general guidance. Now, the Graduate Access Melbourne program, okay, the details are up here on the screen now. So this is for domestic graduate students. What it is designed to do is to help groups that are underrepresented in higher education to get into a degree of their choice. And the JD is one of the programs that uses the Graduate Access Melbourne scheme. To be eligible, your circumstances need to meet at least one of these categories. So recognition as an Indigenous Australian, previous status as a refugee or current holder of a humanitarian visa, disability or medical condition, disadvantaged socioeconomic circumstances, students from a rural or isolated area, and students who have experienced personal difficulties during their studies. So if you do come into any of those categories, I would encourage you to look at the GAM scheme. I have colleagues who work on the selection committee. I know they take a great deal of time looking at our Graduate Access Melbourne candidates, and they really do try very hard, okay, to try and do the right thing to get the right students for our program. So if you do qualify, I encourage you to use GAMS. All right, fee types. Commonwealth supported place is the first one you'll be considered for. Melbourne Law School supported place is the next one. That one makes up the gap between what you can access in terms of your help loans, etc. you can get through the government, and the difference in the cost of the degree itself. You can also then get an Australian fee place, which is a full fee paying place. And after that, we have our international fee places. Now, domestic students are automatically considered for all of those top three categories. So CSP first, then the Melbourne Law School supported place that covers that gap, and then the Australian fee place. All right, so in terms of applications close 18th of October. 30th of November is when outcomes will start to go out, and then February 2025 is when you'd be commencing in LMR. Okay, now that leads me to our student panel. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them. So we've got Augustine, okay, and then we have Alicia and Christian. All right, so you've got two mics down there, and I think we're going to have someone who can roam and use one of the mics. Is that right? Okay, so have you got anything that you would like to say initially? Any of you? Yeah. Okay.
So hi all, I'm Christian. I did a Bachelor of Commerce as my undergraduate degree. In my undergrad, I took a couple of the law breadth, which are elective law subjects. That's how I fell in love with law and was really passionate about pursuing a JD after commerce. I have very recently graduated. I did the JD in a 3.5-year load, so slowed it down a little bit to have a little bit of extra time in the semester to be able to work. Yeah, that just about sums me up.
My name is Alicia. I graduated my Bachelor of Arts from the University of Melbourne last year, and I majored in English and Theatre Studies and Ancient World Studies, and I actually completed my honours year in Ancient World Studies last year. So fresh from honours, this is my first year. I think law is one of those things that I'd always kind of knew that I liked, and maybe I always come back to it. And so when I received the offer, it felt right. And so that's how I ended up here.
Hi guys, my name is Augustine. Everyone calls me AK, but Augustine's fine. I did also study at Melbourne Law School, Melbourne University. Actually, I did a Bachelor of Arts, majored in politics, international studies, and sociology. Yeah, I started my first year as well. I'm part of the MULSS as well. I'm the first year representative for this year. And yeah.
Okay, so I think at this point we will open up for questions. So it can be to our panel initially would be wonderful. Yes, up the back. So
Hi, thank you. So I'm just curious about the written assessments. Maybe directed to Alicia. Was it? Oh well, no, you've all but arts and are they creative in nature, or are they more like legal advice style of assessments? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So far, it's really depended on the subject. There are lots of different styles, often revolving around application of legal principles in different kind of legal writing formats. Of course, you've also got like written exams, but I've only done like core subjects so far. It really does depend on the subject, I think.
I might just add a little bit, having done sort of a couple more subjects in the electives. What I will say is there's sort of two main types of assessment. So there can be what's called like a research essay. So that's more sort of like your standard, you're given a prompt, you'll do a bit of research in relation to that issue and you'll come up with a set response. The other type of assessment that's predominantly used is what's called a hypothetical. So that's where you get to apply what you've learned in class over the last 12 weeks to a made up fact problem. Now, it's not sort of shooting in the dark. The problem is created in a way that sort of picks up on issues that have sort of been the focus in each of your classes and that sort of have like been tested before. And you'll basically use the materials that you've read as well as discussions from class to formulate an advice sort of similar to what you might do if you were to pursue sort of legal practice.
Hi, I think was it Christian? I was just wondering, you mentioned that you were working when you started your JD. Were you working full-time or part-time? I'm just curious about how you managed the study load with employment as well, and whether you had to sort of make changes along the way to figure out what worked for you.
Sure. So when I first started, I wasn't working at the time when I first came into the JD. So I took on the full load initially. So I did like the LMR summer subject and then the full 3 subjects in semester 1. In my second semester, I dropped down to 3 subjects instead of 4. And I was working casually sort of 1 to 2 days a week. I felt that was probably an appropriate mix for me. But I know other students that have done sort of 3 or 4 days working and slowed the JD down in terms of the number of subjects that they've done in the semester. What I will add is just because you do less subjects in the semester doesn't necessarily mean that your JD will take longer per se, because there are those summer and winter offerings that you can dip into if you slow down in the semester. So there's a lot of flexibility to sort of tailor around what your commitments are and find the right balance for you.
Okay, I might come in a little bit there too, because this is often an area that I'm advising students on. My general advice would be that you need to treat a 4 subject load as equivalent to a full-time job. Okay, so basically 8 to 10 hours per week per subject is roughly what you should be looking at through the semester. There will be additional hours you'll need to put in during peak assessment period. So interim assessments sort of around about this sort of midpoint of semester, you'll often have interim assessments that you need to do. And then again, in preparation for your exams. Now, quite a few of our subjects, Christian's mentioned the intensive subjects. So I could teach a compulsory subject in the middle of the year. It comes in second year semester 1 if you're doing a full-time load, but you can do that subject in July at any point during your degree. It's actually not going to affect your prereqs. That's a good thing. A couple of our core subjects too have take-home exams at the end of week 12. And that means that if you do that, you've actually finished one of your subjects. If it's got an exam, before you even go into your swap back period, so your study recess week. That sort of thing can also help ease the load, because it might mean you're only taking 1 or 2 subjects maybe through into an exam period, maybe 2 exams with an essay that's due in during that a similar period of time. So you can look at both the assessments and subjects, but as a general guide, I'd say basically if you're working sort of 3 days a week, I probably wouldn't recommend for most people more than 2 subjects at a time. Yeah, that there's flexibility. All right, would anyone else like to come cover on anything on that? No? Oh, good.
No, I don't know.
All right, we'll go to another question.
Course. So I had a question. You mentioned that you had a commerce background. I was just wondering whether that like was any relevance to your studies in law?
I guess a common question, because there's always a little bit of trepidation in coming into the JD. I sort of felt like I hadn't done an arts degree. Maybe I wouldn't have had the strongest essay writing skills. What I will say is any undergraduate degree is going to have pros and cons, and it's going to prepare you in a different way for the JD. Commerce is obviously a little bit more maths oriented. I found that maybe that wasn't as directly applicable in terms of writing a response to a problem, but what was applicable was the sort of methodical thinking in that breaking things down into a step-by-step process. And that was something that maybe would be a little bit easier for me. So I think all undergrads are valuable. They all teach you relevant skills, and it's just capitalizing on the different aspects of what you've learned to do well in the JD.
Probably using the Legal Academic Skills Centre too. If you're feeling like you're a little bit at sea with a particular sort of task, or you're just not sure where to start, Legal Academic Skills Centre, even just on the LMS page as a first thing, and then having a look, have they got any workshops? Is this something that they cover in the EAGLE program? Having a chat to someone there, that can be really helpful. So there's lots of help available. Don't be afraid to ask for it, because that's exactly what something like the Legal Academic Skills Centre is there to do.
I think that's why EAGLE program is one of the most important things you can have in your first semester of law school. I don't know if you did EAGLE, so we both did EAGLE program, because the way that you answer, like one of the assessments is a hypothetical. The way you answer hypothetical compared to a normal undergraduate essay is honestly a little bit challenging. There's a learning curve that you'll need, and EAGLE program, you'll have someone who has been in the exact same shoes as you and knows how to answer the question in a very high level, and they'll go through each way of answering that question in a way that will make you understand it, regardless of if you did, commerce, biomed, or arts. So yeah, the Legal Academic Centre sort of like helps you in amazing ways. So yeah.
You'll often find learning from later year students is a little bit different to learning from your teachers. They will often pick up on different things. They know sort of exactly where you have been very recently. And so they can sometimes just rephrase something, turn it on its head a little bit, say, have you thought about it like this? And it just gets you thinking. And because they come from a range of backgrounds as well, they know exactly where a lot of you have come from and how to sort of help step you along the way. And Chantel really does handpick people, and she trains them very well to be excellent EAGLE facilitators. Okay.
In terms of the duration, I think you mentioned that you can have it accelerated in 2.5 years. On what basis is that? Would that be, for example, like employment within a legal field, or is that like your performance within the actual degree, I guess?
So you're talking about the accelerated 2.5-year program. Okay. So to accelerate and still complete the degree sort of like within that 2.5-year period, you'll need to be basically studying your full 4 subjects per semester, and you'll have to do some intensives as well to be able to do that. It is really looking at your results, particularly your first year results, and also seeing, can we realistically get you through on the subjects that you need to do and when in the right order. So it is requiring you to have passed everything that you've done sort of at least by the end of your first year, really you wouldn't be applying until about midway through your second year to do something like that, and you'd have to have everything on track. So if you want to do that, I'd be getting the course planning advice early, or really making sure that you know exactly what you want to do when you're taking advantage of intensive offerings of compulsory subjects as well as electives. Electives, you're not always going to be able to get into an intensive one. Okay, they're very popular, but they also do have a lot of people who, for various reasons, might withdraw in the last week or two before teaching. So they're also good ones if you want to sort of think, I still want to do this if I can get in, to keep an eye out for spaces in the week or two before teaching actually commences in some of those, because they're often run over summer and winter periods, and summer periods in particular. Something else will come up, the student will get a clerkship, or they decide to go away for a bit or something, and they might withdraw and spaces will open up. So you've really got to have everything lined up to be able to do something like that, but it is possible, yes. We'd only have a couple each year that would do that, and often it is to meet particular entry requirements for programs, or including it might be graduate employment opportunities that are in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yes. So you mentioned that there's an internship program as part of the degree, but I was wondering whether it's common for students to undertake internships in their summer and winter breaks, whether that's something they normally feel they have time for, and if so, how much support there is from the university in terms of accessing and finding those internships during breaks throughout their study.
Okay, you can only do the legal internship subject once. Okay, so it can only count as one of your electives. After that, you're talking about other programs that might be offered by law firms, and there I might hand over to our student reps. Well, actually, we've got 2 first-year student reps, haven't we? So haven't really gone through that yet. Do you want to comment on that, Christian?
So that program that you're sort of mentioning, there are some generally prescriptive rules around when you can actually apply. So it's not something that you can do every summer or winter as you're going through the JD. Most law firms will actually have a requirement that you're in what's called your penultimate, which is basically your second last year of study. It's sort of, in terms of support around that whole application process, Melbourne Uni does have a great team. So there's the careers team. They will review your CV. They reviewed mine, and they gave me tips for how to adjust it, which I found was really helpful. So I think that there's ample support there, but obviously that is an externally run program. So there's sort of only so much you can really do within the constraints of what you have to work within.
Yeah, the program you're talking about is the clerkships. So summer and winter clerkships, they're called. So most of the big law firms in particular operate under the Law Institute of Victoria clerkship guidelines. So the penultimate year eligibility criterion that Christian mentioned, that's actually set by the LIV, the Law Institute of Victoria, and the firms that sign up to those clerkship guidelines, because it is a competitive process, and often people will be making multiple applications through that. If you search LIV clerkship guidelines, you should find the link to it. They update the guidelines every year, and they have a set date by which you have to apply, and then they have set dates that the firms have to abide by as well in terms of release of offers, etc. But it is, that process itself is external to MLS, but you can utilise things like the careers service, and the MULSS provides a clerkship guide normally each year as well.
Thank you.
Okay, now if you could maybe just pass the mic, right? Thank you. I know you've had your hand up for a while.
I was just wondering if anyone in the panel has applied or is thinking of applying for the joint or degrees with international universities or exchange. And, if you have also thought about it, like maybe also for you as well. I guess my question is, it's an additional challenge on top of managing studies just at Uni Melb. So what do you think might be some of the advantages to apply for that?
So to do a semester of study abroad or exchange?
Yes, or also even the joint degrees.
Yeah, okay, all right. So if I comment on the first one first, that's that shorter period of time. Students will typically be gone for sort of 3 to 4 months, maybe a little bit longer if they're sort of tacking on some travel time as well. You can only do elective subjects while you're on exchange. You have to do either 3 or 4. So you've got to do equivalent to 3/4 of a full-time load or equivalent to a full-time load of 4 subjects while you're at the overseas institution. Sometimes you might have subjects that, because of the way the institution's credit points are set up, you might actually do 5 subjects, but it's 5 of theirs equates to, say, 4 of ours, or maybe 4 of theirs equates to 3 of ours, but you've got to have equivalent to full-time study. That will determine then the number of credit points you get credited to your degree, and that determines in turn how many electives you've got to do when you're here. If you are looking to do the year-long masters, basically you need to do all your compulsory subjects first, plus for most of the programs it's 5 of your electives, and then you need to be trying to time everything, because most of them operate from a mid-year entry point. So they'll typically be starting August or September. So you've got to get your course planning lined up for that. Now, if you are studying part-time, there's no reason that you can't apply for a 12-month master's degree overseas after, say, 3.5 or 4.5 years of study. So the eligibility requirements can cope with that for the other institution if you are looking at doing that. But once you are overseas, you do need to study full-time, typically to meet visa requirements, etc., for the country that you're going to study in. Anyone on our panel? No? All right. Yeah. Thank you.
We do actually, we do have a lot of friends at law school who are doing like exchange programs next year. We have a couple of people going to Birmingham University, and some people going to Berlin, some people going to Singapore. Just because, you know, sometimes, you know, you kind of get tired of seeing the same building all the time. So and also you'll get to meet like some incredible people. So I know a couple of my friends went to Singapore last year, and they came back and they've made incredible friends from Singapore who they still keep in contact with. And all those like little networks that you make will help you again in the future if you ever need them. So yeah.
And if I can just add to that, I don't know if any of you guys would have had the same experience, but a lot of my undergrad was done in COVID. So I couldn't go on exchange in my undergrad. So I'm quite excited about the prospect that you can still do it in the JD. And I didn't know that going in, but that was definitely a pleasant surprise when I found that out.
You definitely can, and you can do it either semester. The only thing I'll say is that if you're looking to graduate very soon after you come back from an exchange, you need to make sure you've done all your course planning beforehand, because there's nothing worse than having everything but, say, one compulsory subject that's only on offer once a year to do when you get back, and it's not on in the semester that you're back, and you've got to hang around for another 6 months. So please, if you're looking at doing that, think in advance and just double check everything in terms of your progression requirements so that you've got all of that lined up.
We've just got a question online, then there's a few more in the room. Can you tell us a bit about the assessment styles from your undergraduate as compared to how you're finding it in the law school? The differences, any challenges, anything that was easier? And how do you find, like, what are the assessments during your subjects here?
Yeah, so I did a Bachelor of Arts and I did just finish my honours. So I've gone from writing one 15,000-word essay to a lot of small assessments and more content-driven work. So there are exams. Again, this depends on the subject. A lot of hypotheticals. We've got a class right now that's got some little interim quizzes. So there's quite a breadth of kind of styles of assessment. But I would say, especially coming from arts, there's a lot more like learning content and then applying it than I was doing at the very end of my arts degree, when I was more coming up with original essay ideas as such.
a lot of that is driven by the Priestley 11 requirements. So the requirements for admission to practice. There are certain content areas that we have to cover and be able to demonstrate to admitting authorities who give us accreditation that we have covered. So they can come in and review our assessments and all of our handbook entries for all of our subjects, making sure that we're covering everything. And so we are in some respects driven by that. And that is one of the reasons for the content. And because we've got 2 panel members who have only really done core subjects at the moment, you're going to have a fair bit of that at the moment, not so much in the elective program.
One of the also other things is that I don't know, a lot of you guys who did, you know, undergrad and stuff like that, you'll get plenty of time to do your assignment if it's like a take home, unless it's like an exam or a quiz, for example. But if it's a take home, you get a lot of time to get to do it. The learning curve that I had when I started the JD is that I got an assignment on Thursday and it was due on Monday at 9 a.m. So your weekend is spent doing that assignment essentially. And if you don't actually pay attention in class and do the readings and stay on top of your work, because honestly, sometimes in undergrad, I will just not do the readings and I'll show up to the lecture and I'll, copy the slides and I'll, get a good mark and I'll go on about my day. But at the JD, you being in class and having expert teachers who are actually barristers in the field gives you a breadth of knowledge that it's unbelievable. So when it comes time to do that, 1 hour through a 3-day assignment, you are so on top of the work that it doesn't feel that hard compared to like undergrad when you had a week or 2 weeks to do the assignment. So it really does depend, but yeah, just staying on top of the work, the assignments aren't that too difficult.
We've got and then we've got one here and one here.
Just to continue on with the exchange program question, it was mentioned that there is that longer master's year-long exchange, and there's also a shorter 2-week exchange where then you would go overseas and then return to complete your assessments at the Melbourne Law School, if that was correct. And also if that is, in terms of the fees that we might be paying, would that be, enrolling through Uni Melbourne and then having those paying?
Okay, those very short international opportunities are those international subjects that I mentioned. So where you might go to New Zealand or Singapore, etc. There's also one, law and legal practice is normally Indonesia, I believe. So you'll have a couple of weeks overseas. I believe the elective fees are basically the standard one, but there are some associated travel costs. There are some supports that you can get with that. The university has a global mobility team who can advise on that sort of thing. Sometimes there'll be things that students can access, like financial need, etc. So there are funding options with that. That sort of information is all made available to students in information sessions prior to the application period opening for those particular subjects. So there will commonly be an information session where you can ask all of those questions. All of that sort of information is set out for you, and then applications will open. Normally it'll be an online form that you'll fill in. You might have to upload a statement of results, that sort of thing, but it's a fairly straightforward process from there. The actual time you're away for will vary a little bit. You'll of course have to have your passport and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, all of that is laid out for you.
I just had a question about the readings. Are they case studies or are they journal articles, or are they both?
In terms of your readings, yeah, you'll have a variety. I can let our student panel comment on that. You'll typically have a textbook for each of your subjects. Sometimes it'll be a set of readings, and they will be journal articles, there will be cases, there will be a variety of things.
Yeah, I think that sort of mainly covers it. Typically there is sort of the textbook. The textbook might combine sort of excerpts of cases, so you won't be reading the entire case for every single case that's set, but it will focus on the particular issue that's the subject of that week's class, and you might read 3 or 4 cases. So I guess the main skill is sort of distilling from them what are the key takeaways? What is it that is sort of useful going forward if I was required to advise somebody? And the journal articles, usually there's a bit of a split. Sometimes it can be explaining cases or interpreting cases, and it might be offering an opinion on that. And that can help you when you're sort of facing writing an essay, if you need to sort of draw on sources to sort of critique the law or think critically about it or support a particular case or a particular view that you like. And other articles might be more in the way of sort of opinion pieces and things of the like.
But majority of the time, you're gonna get cases. Just like, I don't know, how many of you guys have read the Marble case in undergrad? Like, I read the Marble case in undergrad, and then we had to do it in PPL, and we had one judgment. So this is one judge saying stuff about the Marble case, and that was the hardest thing I've ever read in my entire life. I thought I knew the Marble case quite well, but you go into class and my teacher, she's actually one of the best teachers I've ever had, got into class and he goes, if you think you know the Marble case, you actually don't. So you'll get in there and they will teach you how to read a case properly in a way that you'll learn how to pick up the key concepts and apply them to a specific scenario and a specific hypothetical situation that will make so much sense after you do it. Then when you do start reading the cases throughout the years, throughout the subjects, that becomes so easy. You don't even realize that you're reading an 80-page case. It becomes very, very quick.
Yeah, we actually did the Marble case again this semester, and I did notice the first time I was like, this is long and I don't understand legal writing, I think. But this semester I was reading, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And it was a completely different subject, completely different approach. But yeah, that learning curve in the first year, you definitely get used to it.
Yeah. I remember Ian Malcolm once said to me, to our class in first year, by the end of the year, you'll be speaking a different language to your family and your friends, and you don't actually realise it, but it's the professional jargon that we pick up. And one of the skills Eagle facilitators need to learn is how to basically go from that back to how can I help a student learn this? Yeah. Yeah.
Just on the subject of part-time, what is usually available for part-time students in terms of, do they normally take evening classes, weekend classes, or is those intensive ones? That's my first question. My second question is on that intensive class on February. What is the time commitment during that 2-week period?
Okay, all right. So if I go to that second question first, so Alimar, over that 2-week period, it's normally classes either every morning or every afternoon. So we sort of swap over. And that enables us to use rooms and everything. So it works fairly well. So normally either all mornings or all afternoons for that 2 weeks. And then if I go to your part-time in the compulsory program, we do make sure we've got at least one evening class that's available. It will vary a bit depending on numbers. Often those classes are smaller and they are probably more likely on balance to be taught by people who might be, say, at the bar or in legal practice, and they're coming up to teach for us in the evening. That sort of thing, because a lot of our professors, etc., they're here during the day, but they're not necessarily, though some of them will, stay on to teach in the evening. When it gets to the elective program, you might be looking at some of your intensives. Where they're elective subjects, they're often taught over a week, though sometimes the teaching model varies. For the compulsory subjects that are offered as intensives, they tend to mostly be taught over a 2-week period, and the assessment period's also a little bit different. Sometimes you might actually do, if it's, say, an invigilated exam, you might do that before what we would normally call the interim assessment. That might be due later. So I can think of 2 November compulsory subject intensives where you do the exam before Christmas, but you might have another assessment that's due in, say, in the second half of January or something like that.
So I haven't applied yet because I think I might have to start the year after next.
So is that the best thing is just to wait, or do I apply and defer?
We normally don't have deferrals. Okay, you'd normally have to be ready to commence LMR. So if you really don't think you're going to be able to commence next February, I'd probably advise applying next year for the 2026.
And then a related question to applying is, so you talked about the entry requirements if you have an undergraduate degree. If you have a postgrad degree,
that's relevant as well. It's all tertiary study. So if you've got another
so you
postgraduate
just take it all
qualification,
into
all of it,
consideration.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we're wrapping up there, are we? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to our student panel.